Okay, so this is part two of the literary terms that you need to know for the Odyssey unit. And we have talked previously this year about subplots, which are smaller plots within a larger plot. Like if there's a main plot going on, but then there's like a smaller romance story, sort of like in The Lion King, that would be a subplot. But with this unit, we're talking about parallel plots. So this is when a story has two plots that are usually of equal importance. So one is not more significant than the other. Parallel plots are more important than subplots, which are secondary plot lines. So two common types of parallel plots. First one, the characters are established together at the beginning of the story, then the story splits into two different plots, and then the characters converge again at the end of the story. So if you think about Finding Nemo, that movie, this is what happens. Nemo and Marlin start out the story together, and then Nemo is kidnapped, and then he spends the rest of the story in a fish tank, and it flashes back and forth between what's going on with Nemo at the dentist's office and what's going on with Marlin and Dory as they're trying to find him. At the very end of the story, both of the characters converge again and are reunited. And then the second type of parallel plot is when the characters and the plots begin separately, so they were never together to begin with, but then they come together toward the end of the story. So you see the flashback between what is happening with both characters and their stories, and then they're united at the end. Okay, secondly, we have a motif. Now, motif is commonly confused with theme and symbol. They're all a little bit different. In a literary work, a motif can be seen as an image, a sound, an action, or other figure that has symbolic significance and contributes toward the development of the theme. But in order for it to be a motif and not just a symbol, it has to be recurring over and over again in the literary work. So it could be something someone says, it could be a picture of something, it could be a number, it could be a color, it could be a concept, but whatever it is, we have to see it repeated throughout the story in order for it to be a motif. And the purpose of a motif is that it helps to develop the theme of a story, because whatever it is used over and over. Okay, so if we look specifically at The Lion King, water could be a motif because we see it at the beginning of the movie at the watering hole. We see it when Simba and Nala fall in love in the desert. And we also see it when Simba sees his dad's reflection in the water, and then in the rains at the end of the film that restore the Pride Lands. So in this movie, we see water over and over again. It's restorative, it creates new life, therefore we can assume that it's vital to the circle of life, which is a theme of the movie, which is why there's a song called The Circle of Life. Okay, another example, think back again to the Scarlet IBIS. We can see actually a couple different motifs in this movie. One of them is the color red is repeated over and over again, which therefore leads to blood and death. But we also have nature. So we see Old Woman's Swamp, Horsehead Landing, there's the storm, the beauty of the wildflowers through Doodle's eyes, the bleeding tree, the scarlet ibis bird itself. And so the recurring nature motif connects Doodle to the ibis bird. He feels sorry for it, he wants to bury it, and so it just helps to, all of these things help to show Doodle's connection to the natural world itself and help to accentuate the beauty of his short-lived life. Okay, and then we have motifs in Romeo and Juliet too. The most common one is the repeated mention of light and dark. So if we were to go back and look at all of the different quotes from Romeo and Juliet that mention dark and light, it's just in there a ton of times. But you know, just a few. Upon first sight, Romeo exclaims that Juliet teaches the torches to burn bright. She is also the sun who can kill the envious moon. So sun during day, moon during night. She hangs upon the cheek of night as a rich jewel in an Ethiop's ear. That's when Romeo first lays eyes on her. At the end of their honeymoon night, Romeo says, "More light and light it grows, more dark and dark our woes." And so the recurring motif helps to develop the themes of love and romance, and also the struggles that they have to go through to be together, because they're kind of like day and night. They're from enemy families. Okay, so rhetorical questions. This is a literary device, but it's also a rhetorical device where the author asks questions to place effect or emphasis on the point. So the author does not actually expect a response, but the purpose is to draw the audience's attention to the question, and it's not only used in persuasive and argumentative writing, but it's also used in poetry because it really gets the reader to think. So the meme says, "Dear life, when I asked if my day could get worse, it was a rhetorical question, not a challenge." So he obviously must have at some point made the comment, "Oh, could this day get any worse?" Okay, polysyndeton. As part of our To Kill a Mockingbird unit in next year, when you read Hamlet, you'll be learning about a lot of different rhetorical devices. Polysyndeton is one. It's a stylistic device in which several coordinating conjunctions are used in succession, so in order, to achieve an artistic effect. It places more emphasis on the words that you are linking together. You can find some examples in famous literature, in speeches, also in our day-to-day conversations. The term polysyndeton comes from a Greek word, appropriate since we're studying Greek mythology, which means bound together. Okay, so polysyndeton makes use of coordinating conjunctions like and, or, but, and nor. In a lot of different examples, though, it's mostly and or. And these are used to join successive words, phrases, or clauses in such a way that these conjunctions are even used where they might have been omitted. So a lot of times you only use the conjunction between the last two words because it's less wordy, but if you really want to emphasize each of those words and make it sound more powerful, like if you're giving a speech or writing a poem and you're trying to create rhythm, you might say, "Go and hunt her and find her and kill her," rather than "go hunt, find, and kill her." So obviously the first way is more powerful, has more of a poetic flow to it. Another example from Maya Angelou, I know why the caged bird sings. "Let the white folks have their money and power and segregation and sarcasm and big houses and schools and lawns like carpets and books, and mostly, let them have their whiteness." So her use of polysyndeton here really emphasizes all of those individual concepts that she's trying to highlight. So again, the purpose of a polysyndeton, it joins words, phrases, and clauses, and thus brings continuity in a sentence. It acts as a stylistic device, bringing rhythm to the text with repetition of conjunctions in quick succession. And so if it brings rhythm, that makes it very appropriate for poetry. And you all know that adding rhythm and parallelism to your writing makes anything sound more powerful. It is employed as a tool to lay emphasis to the ideas that the conjunctions connect. Okay, so then we have repetition, which is another literary device / rhetorical device. It's the use of repeated words and or phrases. Different types are used in both prose and poetry. There are tons of different ways that authors can use repetition, but why do they use it? Well, to make an idea clear. Also, it's catchy. They can use it for effect. And it also, specifically in relation to epic poems, which are a type of folktale, remember stories that are told orally for a long time before they're actually written down, it helps the bard or the storyteller, the poet, to keep their place in the oral storytelling process because it keeps a rhythm to it. So in the original version of the Odyssey, there are specific words and phrases that we hear over and over and over again, and that's called repetition. But it's like maybe once every 6 stanzas in the poem, you'll hear that phrase, and that'll be how that stanza starts. That's a type of repetition that bards in ancient Greece would use to keep their place in their oral storytelling process. And so that is different from repetition of, let's say, the poem The Bells. The author literally writes the bells, 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 and it kind of goes on and on. That's a different type of repetition that is meant to imitate the sound of a bell being used repeatedly. So this is the last literary device that we're talking about for this unit. Obviously, we'll be touching on some ones that we've talked about earlier this year, like idiom and apostrophe, simile, metaphor, personification, ones like that. But these are the ones that we really need to highlight, and some of these are new. So please come to class with any questions that you have about this material.